All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to Straight Science. Straight Science is an evening seminar series put on by University of Alaska Fairbanks Northwest Campus in Nome, and also University of Alaska Fairbanks Alaska Sea Grant. And tonight you're in the home office. And both Northwest Campus and Alaska Sea Grant, we are public servants of the Bering Strait region. We serve all peoples of the region, which is the homeland and waters of the Inupiaq, St. Lawrence Island Yupik, and Central Yupik peoples. So this is the second of a double header tonight. We had Straight Science last week. We had USGS and US Fish and Wildlife Service talk about the population survey, and we're so excited. I love to talk about or listen and learn about walrus. So tonight we've got a great part two, and that is we'll have leading off Camryn Solano, and she is with the US Fish and Wildlife Service Marine Mammals Management Office in Anchorage, and she's going to talk. Her specialty is she's the lead wildlife biologist for the Marking, Tagging, and Reporting Program, which is, I think many people in the region know it as MTRP, and it's the program where all the information for getting your non-native or Alaska Native harvest or beach cast tusks, when you get your certification, that paperwork goes into Camryn. And then bringing it all home will be Devin Johnson. Devin Johnson also works for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Marine Mammals Management Office in Anchorage. And he is the lead biologist for the Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program, known as the WHMP. And this used to be a more widespread program, and we'll find out where it is now. I actually was a part of it back in the 90s, and I haven't kept up to where you all are, where all your harvest collections are going on. But I know St. Lawrence Island is always been a primary spot for walrus harvest sampling, and those tissues go and produce some of really good research on how walrus are doing. So with that, we're very excited to hear both on the tusk tagging and the harvest monitoring. What you do, what your program's about, and what's the latest news for us regarding walruses. Thank you so much both for being here, and take it away.
Yeah, thank you, Gay, for that introduction, and thanks for having us tonight and for all you that are listening in. Again, my name is Cam Solano, and I'm the lead of the Marking, Tagging, Reporting Program. And tonight we're going to present on walrus harvest in a changing Arctic. So we'll start off with just a Pacific walrus overview. So the population is about 256,000 animals distributed across the Bering and the Chukchi Seas. They migrate seasonally with the ice, where males typically summer at Bering Sea haulouts and females and calves go north following the ice edge. They prefer broken sea ice habitat where they can easily access their food resources like clams and other benthic invertebrates. And most recent available data suggests a large and healthy population. However, it's unclear with the sea ice loss how that will affect the population in the future. So this map shows the winter and summer range of Pacific walrus. So in summertime, the females and calves typically go up north following the ice edge through the Chukchi Sea, where the males go south and stay around Bristol Bay area and Anadyr, Gulf of Anadyr. And then the wintertime, they typically meet up in the Bering Strait area and stay throughout the whole winter. And then we have the red dots representing Eskimo Walrus Commission. They have about 19 communities. And then we have the Kayasik Walrus Commission down in the Bristol Bay area. I think they have about 7 communities. And then the Chukotka region has about 16 communities represented by them. And we know that indigenous communities in Alaska and Chukotka have been harvesting walruses for over 1,000 years. And to this day, they're a crucial subsistence resource for food, economic, and cultural security. We know that the history of walrus harvest is complex and long, but we highlighted a few notes. So 1800s through early 1900s, commercial whalers overhunted and depleted the population. And then the Marine Mammal Protection Act was passed in 1972, which limited harvests to only Alaska Native subsistence use, which helped contribute to their population recovery. And then some commercial harvest was still continuing on the Russian side until the 80s. And then in 1992, it was strictly native subsistence harvests on both Alaska and Russia side. And Russia has a quota that's set by the government, as Alaska communities do not. So this chart shows total adjusted Pacific harvests for Russia and Alaska. It is adjusted for underreported harvests, which Devin will explain later on. So throughout the years, Alaska and Russia have pretty even harvest numbers, where Russia typically harvests more males and Alaska harvesting more females and calves. In the 1980s, you can see that big spike, and that is caused by the commercial hunting and harvest. And then after that, in the last 15 years, we kind of have a stable and low harvest number. And the best available data indicates current levels of harvest are at a sustainable level. But how will future changes to walrus population influence harvest sustainability? So some changes that are happening in the Arctic, we have a changing sea ice regime, which is creating less predictable and longer ice-free intervals, more extreme weather patterns. This is causing walruses to spend more energy to migrate and reach their food resources. They also spend more time at haulouts on land during the ice-free season, which they can be more susceptible to disturbance and predation. With less sea ice, there's going to be more exposure to human disturbances from shipping, fishing, oil, gas exploration, changes to space use and seasonal migration routes. And how are these changes affecting walruses and the subsistence users that rely on them? So over the past couple of decades, we've been working alongside Alaska Native hunters and indigenous knowledge holders, and they've been giving us great reports of what's happening out there in their hunting and the sea ice loss, how that's affecting them. There's several papers out there that are co-authored with hunters, and I'm sure Devin can provide a link to these papers if anyone's interested at the end of this presentation. They discuss changing migration patterns, weather and ice conditions, and hunting window becoming earlier in the spring. They need to travel further across open water to find game. Weather and ice conditions are now becoming more unpredictable and dangerous. They talk about the increasing cost of fuel, ammunition, and as well as the decreasing interest in knowledge from the younger generations. And hunters generally report it is harder to access walruses, which has led to food and economic insecurity in some communities. And by monitoring the harvest, it can help us better understand these impacts of these changes to walrus hunting communities. And it should also be noted that with these papers, we also have a lot of good information that we receive from just going out to communities and having discussions and just hearing what's happening out there and how their hunting season went. So we have a lot of valuable information from the Alaska hunters. So who manages the Pacific walrus harvest? Harvest is self-regulated by walrus hunting communities. There is no federal quota, but some tribal governments have trip limits. The Eskimo Walrus Commission, EWC, and the Kayasik Walrus Commission, QWC in Bristol Bay area, they coordinate co-management efforts. And then Fish and Wildlife Service, we work with them at Marine Mammals Management Office. We monitor harvests, and then we try to get that information back out to communities and get an idea of what the population is looking like. So here's a structure of Fish and Wildlife in our Marine Mammals Management Department. So under that, we have the regulatory program, species programs. We have Walrus, which is manned by one person, Devin, and he focuses on conservation and co-management. We also have Sea Otter, Polar Bear, and then my program, MTRP. We mainly deal with monitoring subsistence harvest, and I also work closely with the individual species, the different programs. Then we have Office of Law Enforcement off to the side here. So they're mainly dealing with compliance, looking at wasteful take, illegal trade, and harvest eligibility. And it should be noted that the other marine mammals are covered under NOAA. So here are the two monitoring programs we have. Marking, Tagging, and Reporting Program, originally created to monitor subsistence and handicraft harvests of polar bear, sea otter, and walrus, gather key biological information, and help prevent illegal take and trade of marine mammal parts. And then Devin's program, Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program, was created as a more intensive way of monitoring walrus harvests in select communities during their peak hunt season to gather more in-depth information and estimate MTRP compliance. So getting into MTRP, the tagging program, these are the subsistence tagging requirements, and these apply to sea otter hides, polar bear hides and skulls, as well as walrus ivory. And items must be taken for either subsistence or for creating and selling authentic native articles of handicraft or clothing. Harvest must be done in a non-wasteful manner, and it must be reported within the 30 days of harvest. And this is very important to get that information within this 30-day window, because outside of that, information can become less accurate. And we really want to make sure we have the exact date and location. And for example, if you harvest multiple walruses over the season, you might get your tusks mixed up and forget what day that one was harvested and where exactly. So we really just stress the importance of getting that tagged within your first 30 days. And I will say you're not going to get in trouble if you come in after. We really encourage just come in, even if it's 60 days after. Just come in and get that tagged, and especially before you're going to trade or sell that item. So we have a community-based tagging network. We have a little over 150 taggers in nearly 100 coastal communities. Focused on the Bering area, Gay is a tagger in Nome, and we have Gamble, Savunga, Wales, Little Diomede. Those are some other communities in the Bering area. Some communities tag multiple species, so in the Bering area, we have polar bear and walrus, and then some Bristol Bay communities have sea otter and walrus. And we've had some taggers that have been, since the start of the program, they've been with us for 30 plus years, and we really appreciate all the work that they've been doing, and this program definitely wouldn't be able to function without them. So very thankful for everyone and their hard work over the years, helping out their communities, getting things tagged. This is an example of what walrus tagging looks like. So on the left here, we have the certificate that the tagger is going to fill out when they're talking to the hunter. So we want to make sure that they get the harvest date, where they harvest it, and then whether it was beach found or a live kill. And then the tagger is going to drill a hole through the top of the tusk, which goes above the gum line, and they insert that wired tag. And you can see that it has a black color with a tag number. The black color indicates an Alaska Native tag, and we'll get into the non-native tags later. So we just record the tag number and make sure all that information, as well as age, class, sex, and they're going to measure the tusk as well. And then we want to make sure they know if there are any calves or yearlings. So since they don't have any tusks to tag, sometimes they're underreported. So recently we've been trying to stress that, make sure you ask the hunter if there are any calves or yearlings, and sometimes there are even adults that don't have tusks, so just making sure those animals get reported, as well as reporting any observations such as sick walrus, whether there was like a group of dead ones on the beach. We've been getting some reports. I know Gay is always very detailed in that, and that's very helpful for us to see. And I included polar bear tagging information since you guys get some polar bears. I know just outside of Nome this summer, Nome got a polar bear, and I think it was since the 80s they haven't hunted one. So, as well as St. Lawrence Island, Gamble got a few, and Sabunga as well back in the spring. So, similar certificate to fill out, making sure we get the harvest date, location, age, class, sex, whether there was cubs present, bear condition, if it was a defensive life kill. And we're also collecting samples, a molar tooth for aging and tissue sample for sex determination. And the samples aren't required, but they're encouraged. And most of the certs that I get in come with samples, so taggers and hunters have been doing a really good job with that and helping us out with that. And you can see the physical tag that's attached to the polar bear skull there on the cheek. We also have to tag the hide as well. Getting into beach found tagging. So if any of you on this call are interested in beach combing, this information might be helpful. So this is specifically for non-native, and this applies to sea otter, polar bear, and walrus hard parts. So this applies to teeth, bones, and ivory. You cannot take a hide off the animal. It has to be within a quarter mile of the beach and not in the water. These items must be tagged and reported to a representative within that 30 days as well. And it cannot be traded, sold, or transferred without permission. And for example, if you want to transfer, me and Gay were just talking about this, but I often get phone calls of a family member wanting to put it in the will or pass it down to their kid. And we can do that. It's usually just call up law enforcement and they can transfer that over and give you a new paper, and it shouldn't be any issues. And so this program is managed through Office of Law Enforcement, so it's separate from my program. It's a little confusing, but Gay is also a non-native tagger, and I am as well. So if anyone ever has any questions, can help you out. And at the end of this presentation, I included some contact information as well as a website link where you can look at the list of taggers that might be in your community. And you can see this blue tag is a little bit different than the native one. So N on there too means non-native, and we have a sea otter skull as well, and that has a non-native tag, which I believe they're all black. And then the Alaska native tags, the colors change each year, but it's clearly labeled, but you can see the difference. So beach found tagging for Alaska natives, it's pretty much the same process as your harvest tagging. And this applies to ivory and hides and skulls. This doesn't include fossil ivory. I should note for non-native as well, but fossil ivory does not have to be reported or tagged. And it can't be collected on federal and state land, but it can be collected on private land if you have permission from the landowner. And you also have 30 days to get that tagged. And then once that's tagged, it can be sold, traded to other Alaska natives, or you can turn that into a handicraft and sell it to a non-native. So just a season summary. So back in April, some of you might know Brad Benter, he retired kind of suddenly. So I had a couple months working with him, and then I had to take over the program. So it's definitely been a learning process, and my priorities so far have been just meeting all my taggers in different communities, whether that's a visit or just a phone call, just trying to get updated information to them, tagging supplies if they need more training. And then I was lucky enough to get out to St. Lawrence Island and spend some time with the WHMP program in Gamble and Sabunga. So I was able to meet some taggers, get them supplies, and then try and coordinate with them to be around when Walrus Harvest was coming in so they could provide tagging services right there on the spot to try and get more compliance from that. And then harvest certificates are still coming in for 2025. I put some of these harvest numbers at the bottom here for all three species. And for walrus, this includes beach found ivory as well for the walrus. And I would say in the next 6 months or so, I would be more confident in these numbers for 2025, but it's kind of delayed. It gets sent through the mail, so it takes a while. And sea otter hunting has been very busy in the last couple weeks, so I definitely think we'll get some more reports coming in for the next few weeks. And yeah, these numbers are through last week. So, and I just threw this graph in here. This is reported walrus harvest across all Alaska communities. This does not include beach found. And you can see for 2025, it is significantly lower. And I know part of that is for some underreporting, didn't get reporting in yet. Just wanted to include that in there. But yeah, for the last 6 years, you can kind of look at this trend, and Devin's going to get into some more preliminary trends he's been looking at. So why is MTRP important? Well, first off, it ensures compliance with the NMPA. Accurate reporting of harvest timing and location supports improved species management. It builds a long-term record of harvest trends and related environmental variables. So with that, we're able to look back and kind of see if there's changes in the harvest seasons, whether it's becoming shorter, happening earlier, later, and maybe we can pinpoint that with an environmental variable that's happening, like sea ice extent. And then supports management for long-term population health and can help protect subsistence activities. And yeah, that's it for me. So I'll pass it over to Devin for WHMP.
All
Great.
right. Do you want to wait for questions at the end on the marking, tagging, reporting program, or do you guys want to handle that? I should have asked you in the beginning, but you've got two
I think
separate programs.
we'll wait until the end for all
Okay.
questions. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, great work, Cam, and hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. Again, Devin Johnson, walrus biologist with Marine Mammals Management in Anchorage. And kind of like Cam, we recently had Joel Garlick Miller retire from our program, who was kind of the one of the main walrus biologists. So we're definitely learning a lot of things about how our program works in his absence. But anyway, yeah, I'll be talking a little bit about the Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program and also some preliminary trends we're seeing in the data. So the Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program, which we abbreviate as WHMP, yeah, the MTRP that Cam just described is a great way to get a baseline for how many walruses are getting hunted out there. And it has a really impressive data set going back a lot of years. But as she mentioned, some animals through the MTRP wind up getting underreported, especially like females and calves or animals that don't have tusks, or sometimes people just forget to tag their ivory, or it's been sitting around for too long. Anyway, so the WHMP is a way to get more specific walrus harvest information. And the way it works is that we have a team of local monitors at certain villages during certain times who go out, and they're meeting hunting captains and hunting crews when they get back from their hunt. They're meeting them on the beach to get information about the animals that were harvested. So this program kind of started up way back in the 1980s, and it was originally in Gambell, Savunga, Nome, Wales, and Little Diomede, where Gay was stationed out there for a couple of years back in the 90s. But yeah, since the early 2000s, we've kind of scaled it back and focused just on St. Lawrence Island. There's a couple of reasons for that. The main being that we think St. Lawrence Island is getting like around 80% of Alaska's total walrus harvest. But yeah. Um, so the WHMP went on for a lot of years, and then COVID kind of threw a wrench in those plans and led to it being inactive for a couple of years. There was some effort in 2020, 21, 22, but it really wasn't quite the same effort as was done previously. And then there was no program in 2023 or 2024. So we've been working within our department to get funds and bring it back, and we were able to restart it this past spring. So again, this program gives us a more complete picture of the walrus harvest in Alaska, kind of honing in on what the demographics of the harvest are, the males versus females versus calves and juveniles. We also get information about about how the hunt went, how far they had to go, any other environmental information, other seals and other things that they hunted, all gets recorded. So the main purpose of the WHMP is to create a correction factor so we can compare the WHMP, like more specific WHMP data against the more baseline MTRP data to kind of correct the MTRP data, which we could maybe use that correction factor for other harvests in other communities. It also allows hunters to help us and donate samples from walruses, which has provided a lot of really good data to some partner projects over the years. In 2025, speaking of samples, we had, how many is that? 5 different walrus research projects that the WHMP was able to provide samples for. There is a harmful algal bloom study being run by NOAA that's testing organs and stomach contents for toxic algae in hunted walruses. We're also monitoring for bird flu with Fish and Game's help to run the analyses. They're testing liver tissue for the presence of highly pathogenic avian influenza, which we're sort of worried about just in general in the Bering Strait region. I will note about bird flu, it has never been detected in a Pacific walrus. There was one Atlantic walrus last year over in Norway that was found to have it. But we're monitoring for that as broadly as we can. We're also able to get skin samples from harvested walrus and add them to the samples that are taken through the project that Bill and Irina talked about last week, the close-kin mark recapture abundance estimation project. So a skin sample from a hunted walrus is just as good as a skin sample from one that we get out there on the research expedition. USGS is doing a study generally looking at female body condition and reproductive rates, so we're able to provide tissues for them. And then we're working with a partner at American University who's running some analyses looking at contaminants in diet. So there's, the samples that hunters generously collect for us and that we can kind of get through the WHMP go towards a lot of really good walrus research. In 2025, there were a couple of years of inactivity of the WHMP. So we had to do a lot of groundwork getting it back up and running again, hire new crews, train up the leads. So Cam and I and a couple other folks, Irina is on this call, she was there, from the Fish and Wildlife Service and USGS went out to St. Lawrence Island this spring. And we worked to hire and train our team of local monitors and also meet with captains and train hunters in sample collection. The 2025 spring hunting season on St. Lawrence Island was pretty tricky, really challenging conditions, especially in Savunga. You can see this map. This was taken satellite imagery from the middle of May, which is typically the kind of the peak walrus hunting time out there. And there was this really thick pack of ice that a continuous north wind kept blowing into the north side of the island. So Sabunga really wasn't able to get out until much later in the season than they're used to. Gamble had wound up having, I think, a pretty normal season for them. They got 280 walruses total and were able to get out and hunt 18 days that we monitored. Sabunga only got 62 walruses, which I think is the lowest we've recorded through this program. They're only able to get out and hunt 8 days in the spring that we monitored. And again, those samples that we got were to support these research projects. We were able to get quite a few samples for these various projects I just explained. Here's also a breakdown of the demographics of the harvest. So you see Gamble on the left and Sabunga on the right, the different colors. Blue is males, red is females, light blue is calves, orange is subadults, and cyan is yearlings. So yeah, looking at this, you can see pretty clearly Gamble got a lot more animals, and yeah, a lot more calves and females than Sabunga did. And yeah, we want to thank our great teams of local monitors we had out there this year. I think we had about a dozen in both Gamble and Sabunga. And also huge thanks to Cam, who, you know, it's a huge project to run on your own, and she kind of led up the coordination for Gamble while I did Sabunga. So Cam showed this earlier. This is, again, just an overview of total estimated walrus harvest, corrected for a couple things, going back to 1960. In red, we have Russia, and in blue, we have Alaska. And yeah, you can see that over the past couple of years, harvest has been like pretty stable and low across the board compared to the past. And yeah, the reason we get after these numbers specifically, the Fish and Wildlife Service, occasionally every 5 years or so, we do what's called a stock assessment report, where we have to report overall harvest and other causes of mortality. So there's some technical documents that we need to do every now and again that we need an overall harvest estimate for. So as I mentioned, these numbers are adjusted. These are not the raw numbers that are going to come straight from the MTRP. All numbers in both Alaska and Russia are adjusted for a struck and loss rate. So of 42%, which is a really big number. So yeah, what this is basically is animals that, you know, get shot or struck and sink or escape or aren't recovered in time. It's really difficult. Ours have really thick skin, thick skulls. They can sink pretty fast, so it's really difficult to kill and retrieve a walrus, basically. And this number comes from a study done back in the 1970s, and some data from the 60s as well. So we're really hoping we can work on improving this number in the future, but it's still what we're using for now. There's also a compliance correction factor, which we've estimated through comparing the MTRP versus WHMP data in the past. So that's multiplied by the raw numbers as well. And yeah, we're hoping that more WHMP seasons will help us get a lot more good data and help us refine that correction factor, and we can generate a new one. So yeah, we get a lot of really good data through both these programs, and it can show us some interesting preliminary trends about what's happening in the harvest. So for the next couple slides, I'm just going to show a couple figures. And again, this is a preliminary analysis. We're still kind of working on building it out into something more official. And yeah, I think Cam's hoping to do a poster on it at the Alaska Marine Science Symposium in January. We're also hoping to maybe yeah, if we build it into a publication somewhere along the line, we're hoping to get input from some Alaska Native hunters and community members to get that side of things as well. But basically, what we're looking at is data to support the trends that people out in the communities are already seeing. The main one is in the, so with most of these graphs, we're looking at the MTRP data going back to 1990 through 2024. We haven't had a 2025 yet because it's not quite done. So yeah, the main preliminary trends, the strongest thing that we see out there is a significant decline in the reported walrus harvest from 1990 to present. If you look at these points, you can see this inflection points in 2013, where it was higher before 2013, lower after. And our idea is that this might be correlate to a shift in the sea ice regime. And again, with this data, it's important to keep in mind that there's two things going on here. This could be a real trend, meaning that fewer walruses are getting hunted. It could also mean that fewer people are reporting their harvest. So there's that caveat to it. But with some of these trends, the relationships are so strong that it's probably a little bit of both going on. People report different amounts of how many walruses they harvest every year. We're looking at these analyses with that in mind as well. But if we look at this 2013 inflection point a little closer, we can see, this is just another way of looking at the same data on the left, breaking it into the harvest before 2013 and the harvest after 2013. And you can see that in the more recent years, it's almost half of what it was back in the years before 2013. So it's this really strong trend we're seeing in the overall number of walruses that get reported. This also corresponds to kind of 2012, 2013 was maybe around when the Bering Strait region really started experiencing changes to the sea ice regime. So on this plot on the right, you can see we're in the average annual ice cover over the Pacific Walrus Range, looking at those same years, and there was also a significant decline between pre-2013, post-2013. So one kind of overarching thought is that this change in the sea ice regime might be one of the driving factors behind this decline in the harvest. Here's looking at a couple of the communities individually. We just pulled the top 10 communities that, the 10 communities that hunt the most walruses over this time period. And these lines are just looking at a linear model trend. But you can see generally across these communities it does look like there's a decline. Probably the strongest ones we see here are a significant decline in the number of walrus that are coming in Gamble, and then this really strong decline in Diomede. Diomede used to be one of the bigger walrus hunting communities out there. They used to get a couple hundred a year, and they really haven't been getting very many that recently. We also see when we break down the data that the proportion of the statewide walrus harvest that gets reported through the MTRP, the proportion of walruses hunted on St. Lawrence Island is increasing. So the other communities are hunting less, whereas proportionally Gamble and Sabunga are hunting more. Back in 1990, Gamble and Sabunga accounted for about 65% of the harvest, and today they account for about 90% of the reported harvest. This is an analysis that Cam's predecessor in the MTRP program, Sarah Hanchett, did. I think it was 2 years ago. She presented it in AMSS with my help. But she was interested in looking specifically at the effect of ice on both the timing and distance hunters have to travel. And yeah, these figures, you don't have to really understand anything that's going on other than these trends showed this significant relationship where when there's less ice in the spring, this was focused on the St. Lawrence Island communities, I should mention. So just Gamble and Sabunga represented here. But when there's less ice during the St. Lawrence Island springtime hunting season, hunters have to do their harvest earlier in the season and travel further to get game. So this is kind of data to back up and support trends that have been reported and noticed by members of the communities. Here's a graph. Here we're looking at the trends in harvest demographics over time, also with the MTRP data. And so in blue is adult males, reddish is adult females, green is calves, and subadults and subadults and yearlings are down here. The main thing we're seeing here is this really strong trend that there are proportionally more males in the MTRP reported harvest over time and proportionally fewer females. So there's kind of this pretty clear shift from kind of hunting more even amounts of both sexes to a more male dominated harvest. I think this is the only graph I have that shows WHMP data, but we ran that same analysis with what we have for WHMP data since early 2000, and we see the same thing. So again, we're primarily looking at Gamble and Sabunga in this data set, but you can see if you compare the two, you see this trend again, that it looks like proportionally more adult males and fewer females. You can also, if you compare between these, you can see that the WHMP data reports a proportionally higher amount of calves than the MTRP data does. So that's maybe some evidence to suggest that calves are getting underreported in the MTRP data. And that's something we're going to explore a little bit more in the future. We also noticed this interesting strong trend in tusk size in the MTRP data. So when hunters bring their tusks in, the tagger is measuring tusk length and circumference. Circumference is kind of a better measure for overall size, just because tusks can wear down over time, and length isn't like that great of an indicator. So yeah, here we're looking at tusk, both length and circumference. And yeah, we see this really strong trend where the tusk size of adult males is increasing over time. And yeah, we're still kind of trying to figure out what that means, if anything. Whether it means that the hunters are selecting for males with larger tusks than they did back in the day, or if it indicates a demographic shift in the population, like more older males are out there that have bigger tusks or something like that. But we just thought it was kind of interesting. I'll share it. So these preliminary trends we're looking at so far Our MTRP harvest data from 1992 to last year indicates this strong declining trend in overall walrus harvest that seems to be synced up pretty clearly with declining sea ice. We'd also see that when there's less sea ice out there, hunters are going out earlier in the season and traveling further to get walruses. We see that, this demographic shift where fewer females and more males proportionally are getting hunted, and this trend in tusk size. So we're interested in building this out and exploring it more. But it's just an example of the sort of data these programs can provide. So a question we get a lot is the walrus harvest sustainable? And what's, if the population declines in the future, what's going to happen to harvest? This isn't the focus of this talk tonight, but we wrote a paper that got published last year. We did this modeling effort looking at different harvest levels under potential climate change scenarios. We're looking at kind of the combined effects of both sea ice loss and human disturbance. And here's a QR code here. If you want to read the paper, you can look it up. I can also link it in the chat when we're done here. But if you want to learn more about this modeling effort, might be interesting to take a look at that. But our sort of main finding is that compared to these other stressors that the walrus population is experiencing and might be experiencing more in the future, associated with sea ice loss and disturbance effects from chipping, that sort of thing. There's other effects wind up affecting the population a lot more strongly than harvest does. Harvest doesn't have as much of an impact as those other things that are going on. We also, before this paper, we didn't really have a good numerical way of proving that walrus harvest is sustainable. But we provide evidence of that current rates are within a sustainable range, and that even under the worst future climate change scenario we looked at, harvest can continue at current rates in a sustainable way. But as things are changing in the Arctic, we just stress that it's really important to keep monitoring the harvest and the walrus population in general. Before we go, and this is a completely different project we're working on, but we are looking for the community's help in getting us some walrus haul-out observations. So we are currently working with USGS to update this data set called the Pacific Walrus Coastal Haul-Out Database, where this was put together by some of my colleagues in 2016. But it goes over sort of the history and basically everything we know about every place within the Pacific Walrus range where they've hauled out on land. And you see on this map, all these blue dots are historical or current haul-outs of various sizes. But we're working on updating it, and this database, relies on community observations. Really anybody who sees walrus hauled out on the beach and can report it to us is really great information for us to have. We're also starting to add in some satellite imagery analysis to this update as well. We've just kind of started looking at these, but here's a couple examples for what the higher resolution satellites can show us at some of these sites. Here's Big Diomede, Eisenbeck Lagoon, in the spot called the Pika River in Russia. So we're kind of supplementing our update to this database with both community observations and some satellite data. But again, if you've seen walruses hauling out on land, either recently or in the past, where you have a good memory or record of it, we would love to hear from you. We can add your sighting to our descriptions of these haulouts, and it's really important for us to kind of understand when these haulouts are occupied and by how many walruses. So if you have any information on where, when, and how many walruses you saw, any photos or coordinates you could share are great, but not required. Also, if you've noticed that they're hauling out somewhere new, or they used to haul out somewhere and they aren't anymore, that's really good information for us to have too. So yeah, you could reach out to me directly with any observations you have if you're willing to share. I'll also have my contact info on this slide. And yeah, I think that's all we have for you guys tonight. We're happy to take any questions. Thanks.
All right. So thank you, Camryn. Thank you, Devin. That was very interesting. Before questions, we always ask that the Straight Science audience show a little love to the speakers in the chat, or nowadays people send off, yeah, they can do that. I don't know how to do it, but the on-screen things, because it's never easy being a straight science or a public presenter ever. And you guys pulled it off, and we're really glad you took time out of your evening to bring us up to speed on both the marking, tagging, reporting program and the Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program. So with that, we'll start off with any questions. There you go. You're getting lots in the chat. That's good. All good. Any questions? I know I have some, but let's let others go first. You guys, anybody have a question off the bat?
Yes, this is Peter. If I could ask
Hi,
one,
Peter. Go ahead.
I'm curious about that 42% struck and loss rate. How does that compare with, say, bowhead whales or other animals that are monitored? Is that a low number comparatively, or a high number, or how does it work?
That is a great question. And then, yeah, that's really something that we should know about and look into. Yeah, my understanding is it's pretty high if we're considering, animals in general, but I'm sure many marine mammals have potentially similar rates. But I bet there's a number out there for bowhead whales that could give us some more information. Thank you.
So Peter, just to follow up on that, the 42% is often seen as controversial in the history in the last 40 years. That number is from a paper by Bud Fay and others. And that was from, I think that paper, do you guys know what I'm talking about? Where that 42% came up? What was the year of that citation? 60s? 70s? It's an old,
It might have been in the 80s, but the data set went back to the
went way
60s.
back.
So yeah, one thing where, yeah,
So it is interesting. Thank you for asking that question, Peter, because it does kind of go up in people's minds. My question, I heard the word compliance, and I haven't heard that in a long time for the Walrus Harvest Monitoring Program. And you were correct; it was actually established in the 80s for compliance with harvest. So that's an interesting thing that's come back. But I just wanted to, right off the bat, you did mention that the harvest of walruses is not, is sustainable. And I was going to ask, because I know we have the population folks online, are we using that 2015 harvest estimate, population estimate for walruses? What is
yeah,
what do you use as the current number for 200,000, something I could round off?
yeah, the sustainability model we looked at uses that. The
200,000?
most number we have as a baseline, yeah, 266,000 or.
Okay, so I'm going to round to 200,000 walruses. And just for people online who are harvesters, this comes up because that's always a thing in the past. You guys are young. The past is history. That is real life for us oldies. And so if you have 200,000 walrus and even if you have a 42% struck and loss, right? If you had, I looked at your 2024, the data where it's Russian and American, and I looked at 24, which is probably the last year you have a good estimate for harvest. I think it looked just on your thing, it was sort of small, where you have the blue and the red graph, bar graph. So it looked like about 3,000 walrus were harvested combined, Russian and US. So if you added a 42% removal, I think the total harvest would be, just on the back of my napkin, is 4,260 walruses. That's including struck and loss and everything. So that's, if you round up, that would be 5,000 walrus. If you had 3%, if you were removing 3% of the population on harvest, you'd be at 6,000. So it's very sustainable. The harvest is, I know you guys can't say these things, but I'm just sort of showing how you guys are using these numbers, right? Is that about right? How that works?
Yeah, and
Okay.
I'll mention it's all complicated. The model paper.
Oh yeah, I'm giving the back of the napkin, but
it focuses on specifically looking at the kind of the reproductive female subset of the population, because that's really what's going to be driving population level changes.
Yeah.
That whole model paper is framed thinking specifically about reproductive aged females. So we think, our estimate, it was like 1.2% of the reproductive aged females is the current harvest rate.
Yeah. So very, very low. So I know we have people from the islands on, and it's just backing your statement up, because I kept hearing the word compliance, and that triggers something in me, but that's because I'm old. But the harvest levels, when you're tagging and when you're doing these things, it's actually, when you say they're sustainable, they really are sustainable given the numbers that we have to work with. That's why it's so important what Irina Trukhanova and Bill Beatty were talking about last week about getting this population estimate. It's very important to get these numbers. And then what you're trying to do, as far as harvest, those kind of things you're trying to get at. Is that a problem? No, it is not a problem. But that's sort of what your program is right in there helping to determine, right?
Yep. That's
kind of a heads up if there was a problem.
Yeah. We think it's, especially with things changing out there, it's really important to keep monitoring the population as closely as we can, so we can identify if there's any big changes going on with the population.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. I just want to point that out as kind of an example of what we're talking. So thank you. Any questions for the marking, tagging, reporting program? Oh, Isaac, there you are. Thank you so much. Go ahead.
Hey, Gray and David. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot. I'm just new to Alaska, so I don't know anything about wireless until I saw this presentation. I was happy, and at the same time, I'm also curious a little bit about your graph with the linear trend. Like when you look at it, it indicates that more of the males have been harvested compared to the female. So, like, could it be like the males are more aggressive to come forward for them to hunt them compared to females, or the females they move further far away, so it's difficult to hunt them compared to the males or something? I don't know. If you can just throw a little bit light on that, I'll be so happy.
Yeah, thank you. Good question. Devin or Camryn or any of the harvesters we may have online, do you have any thoughts? Isaac is interested in why that might be that the males have gone up, and what are the characteristics potentially that people are looking for in harvesting. Have I got that right, Isaac?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's something we're still really interested in digging into more and trying to unpack. One thing that might be going on is changes to seasonal movement. So it could be that there's more males available to them relative to females than there were in the past. And that could be one thing driving it. We also know that back in the 90s and early 2000s, that there might be some cultural shift in um, people hunting for food versus for ivory, for handicrafts. We know that with one reason females were hunted a lot in the past was for their skin to make skin boats, and that's not done anymore. People use more modern boats out there. So yeah, there's a few things that could be contributing to that, but we'd really love to talk about it more with some hunters and community members to try to dig into it a bit more.
Any thoughts out there in the audience? All right, Isaac, you asked a good question, and funny enough, the picture that we're seeing on the screen right there is from Bristol Bay, and I don't know how familiar you are with Walrus or the state, but Bristol Bay is down north of the Aleutian Islands. It's northeast of the Aleutian Islands, so it's in the southern Bering Sea, the very southern portion of the southern Bering Sea. And that right there is a summer haul out, and every one of those walrus down there is a male. That's a place called Round Island. And in US waters, a lot of adult males go down that far south and haul out. They're resting. It's not the breeding season. They don't have to fight each other. They are built to feed offshore, male walrus more so than a female, and they don't have to deal with the calf. So the males go away. They have the ability to feed offshore, and they can go to this location, Bristol Bay, where there's many, many clam beds, and they like to eat clams and things on the bottom, other things on the bottom that are soft. And one of the things is the ice has changed. You'll hear that less ice, and their breeding season's in the fall. This actually came up last week, and it was something I was thinking, well, I've heard there's, you see more males. And so are these males potentially moving up early to meet the females and coming up and spending more time or coming in earlier to get up north where they need to be for the breeding season? So that's interesting to me, Devin. I see now where that data shows up in your work, that there's more, and I just don't know. I don't harvest walrus, of course, but that's a good question. I wonder, I don't know the Bristol Bay data, haul out data. Does that indicate that there's less activity on those southern US water haul outs? Less numbers?
That is something that we are currently actively looking at with
Okay.
satellite data. Yeah.
Or you does the ADF&G, Alaska Department of Fish and Game, have their state biologists out there anymore?
Yeah,
They do.
and I've been hoping they'll publish their most recent reports soon, but they've seen at Round Island specifically, they've seen a general decline in use over the past 20 or 30 years or so.
Yeah.
But there's other walrus haulouts in Bristol Bay. Walrus move around a lot, and it's really difficult to track whether that means that there's fewer in Bristol Bay or they're just kind of moving around to different spots in Bristol Bay. But
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Hey, Gay, may I say something? This is Bivers.
Yeah. Hi, Bivers. Glad you're on.
To Isaac's questions in regards to are males more aggressive than females? There's a couple of things I want to say in regards to the walrus migration. It all depends on a season, whether there's a lot of ice or lack of ice. But the females come around usually, from my understanding. They're loners. They stay away from their herd as much as possible until the babies get a little bit bigger. And then later on, further up north, that's when they start getting together with the males. Usually the males come around after the females. And that just, I want to say, answer part of your question in regards to why males are hunted more than females, because of you guys mentioned the ice, depleting ice. Well, you got to understand, from a subsistence hunter, it's not just the depleting ice. It's basically the weather pattern. The weather is, we hunt on weather, and we follow the weather. We go when the weather tells us to go. And like Camryn and Devin said, we chase the ice, and it gets more dangerous for us to go further and further out. There are times when we're heading back 60, 80, 100 miles out. You have to lighten the load to try and get back as fast as you could. But that's one of the reasons. It's a safety reason for us subsistence hunters, walrus hunters. And Isaac, yes, they're both very aggressive at times. They're very protective. It all depends on how much they are disturbed or harassed or whatever. Ships, planes, whatever, any activity that's going on, they do get aggressive. And they will definitely attack your skiff, your boat. It happens in the past. And it's not a very exciting time to be attacked, but it's mainly, I want to say it's mainly a combination of ice and weather that makes us go hunting or not. So like animals had like more males, maybe because of the weather. Of course, Devin showed a very good graph on St. Lawrence Island. It's been happening for years and years. We got to wait until the shore ice breaks up to go out walrus hunt. By then, you'll get lucky to get females and calves. These guys travel 80 miles out, 60 miles out just to go after what they can. They prefer females because they have a lot of good meat, breast milk, and of course we eat the younger, the calf too. That's a delicatessen for us, you big people. And we share an abundance of our food, for your information. That's what I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thank
Oh,
you,
thank you
Bivers.
so much. Oh, sorry. Thank you so much, Barbers and Gay and Dave. I really appreciate it. I have learned a lot, and I have really enjoyed all the explanations. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Thank Devin and Bivers and Cam. So what I'm hearing, Bivers, is opportunity and timing really do play a part.
Yes, it does.
Yeah.
Weather patterns are crazy nowadays. It's unpredictable.
Because my understanding, and the way I've always been told and seen it, is there's used to be, I guess when the world was more predictable, there was a, what do you call it when there was an order to walrus and the animals. There was an order to it, and the last ones to show would be sort of those big round island-y bulls, those big male bulls, right? Big. And when you
Yes.
saw those, people would say, "Oh, get ready, we're going to see green flippers or these are the no more hunting. These big old walrus are here. So that's the tail end of the trail for the migration. And then, I would assume other males are headed down to um, Bristol Bay. But yeah, that's interesting. So that the timing may be such that they're still trying to do that. And you guys, I'm just I'm just guessing here, data-free opinion, but because you're being held back by the ice, maybe the only thing you have access to is those big old bulls. If that's late and they're
Yes.
still on there, yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you.
Yeah.
I have a question.
Go ahead.
So I was thinking and remembering when I was on the Sequoiac and we went 100 miles off Barrow and way up there into Beaufort, and we did see some walrus up there. So is it usual? I mean, I never thought Barrow was a walrus hunting community, but that ice is it's way far up there, and we did see some walrus on the ice up there. And, I wondered if this was a normal thing. Growing up here, Diomede was a strong walrus hunting community. Excuse me. And, it was common to see the hunters bring back loads and loads of meat. And, and you could have everybody in the village had their food for the, for the winter throughout the summer. Now I'm thinking maybe back 2014, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, how hard it was for the hunters to go and catch as much walrus like they did in the past. I do recall our ice condition became really bad, unpredictable. Like from the ice flow, we saw more ice flow before it formed, more ice flow, stronger winds happening. And I remember in the winter, so from January, February, March, April, the ice was frozen across the strait, yet both sides, north and south of the Little Diomede and Big Diomede, were open water. So usually the men would go out in April and May, and they're able to boat pretty far out, around, and catch the walrus, right? And bring home some walrus. But then that wasn't the case anymore. I think, what they were seeing was all this new ice was a big problem. They couldn't boat through it. They had to turn back. Winds were unpredictable. You would get strong winds up. It's time to come home, and it was too soon. By then, maybe the walrus already passed. Maybe passed on the east side, maybe on the west side of Big Diomede. So we're seeing less and less walrus hunting, or harvesting, I should say. And thinking of when the female walrus migrate north, we see the walrus, and yeah, we see the walrus all the time, but then our weather is always so crappy. We're seeing more high winds than ever, pretty much throughout the year. That's what I'm thinking. So I don't know if any of the presenters have an answer to how far these walrus go up north past the Chukchi, and where do they remain, and how long are they up there for?
Yeah. So yeah, just thinking generally about Barrow. Like I know it's been a walrus hunting community, not a strong walrus hunting community, but I think they hunt some walruses, and they have for the past 20 or 30 years. But it is probably happening much more frequently that the females and calves are going that far north because the edge of the ice is going way far north. And then eventually what happens these past 10 years or so is it goes beyond the continental shelf. So it goes way up by the North Pole, and the entire range of the walrus is ice free. Yeah, you go far north enough, you reach a certain point where the continental shelf ends and the water gets super deep, and walruses can't dive that deep to get their food. So they're kind of restricted to this area.
Oh yeah.
And when that happens, they can't rest on ice anymore because there's no ice. So they have to go and rest on land at these big haulouts like you see at Point Lay. So yeah, kind of, I guess to get after that, yeah, I'd love to talk to somebody from Barrow about it a bit more, but I suspect that they're spending a lot more time around there than they used to. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And so Diamede, I'm not sure who our EWC representative is. It's probably one of the tribal councilmen, but it would be nice for them to, gain information that you've shared today, and have this information because they're representatives, they might share information to the community members. I think that would be very nice. I think there should be more involvement with your representatives, with walrus and polar bear and tagging, because I don't even know who the taggers are here or who the tagger is. Maybe a flyer should be posted up somewhere. Then the information can get out there and people will be on the same page together.
That's a good
Yeah.
point, Opik. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for sharing your observations around Diamede too. I'd love to talk with you or the Diamede EWC representative more about what folks on the ground there are experiencing. But yeah, we are hoping / planning to have a full Eskimo Walrus Commission meeting next month. I think, yeah. So your commissioner will be hearing soon about an invite to that, and that'll kind of be we'll share some of this information, and we'll have a couple of the other walrus researchers give presentations about kind of the current stuff going on with walrus and research and management and conservation.
You think that, so if the Eskimo Walrus Commission meeting that's going to happen and the representative here couldn't fly out of Diamede, maybe you could set up for a Zoom conference.
Yeah, our hope
Or
is
not just the representative, and also for hunters as well, because you guys shared some really important information here.
Yeah, we're hoping we will make it a hybrid meeting. So if anybody can't make it to Anchorage, we can have them call in, and hopefully we can get them set up with internet to see videos of the presentations and all of that.
And are the public allowed? Like, what I think Opik's asking is, can you have a Zoom call that's open, like all co-management meetings are, to public watching as well? You can go into executive session and boot out all the general public when you have something controversial or sensitive to talk about, but all co-management meetings are, is that correct? They're all open to the public. This is federally funded, right? So if maybe that's something, would that work? Is that what you're trying to get at, Opik? Like, if they have a Zoom, you could have everyone show up at the tribal office if they want to sit in and listen to what the commissioner's hearing.
Yeah, that would be awesome.
That kind of thing. Is that
I think
what I was
think that would be a great thing, especially for the hunters. Because they harvest the walrus and the polar bears too.
Yeah.
So it would be good because there's not enough communication sharing when it comes to representatives who are EWC, AWC, all those other representatives for marine mammals. We never get to hear any reports from them if they had left for a meeting. They never come back and share us information. Would be nice to have.
So
Yeah,
maybe we could talk more about that. I don't know if I'm opening up a can of worms. My understanding is that right? Co-management meetings are open to the public. If there's a sensitive thing, you go to executive session.
yeah. I think if there are specific interested folks who want to tune into it, I think we could arrange that.
I think the public
Mhm.
is anybody, Irina or anybody else on the line, federal? Am I off on that? Is that? I think they're open to the public.
I think there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
So
the
just something to think. I don't think people realize that in the region here that everybody could tune in. And if there's decision making, which is the tribally, your tribal appointed rep speaking on behalf of the tribe of whatever community, if there's something there, then if it's a sensitive subject like house cleaning or whatever they need to do, finances, whatever, then they can go into executive session and then the tribe will hear about that from their rep. But I think it just sounds like I hear this again and again. Like it'd be great if people, and I always say, well, I think you can attend. Yeah. Be great to
yeah.
have
Also,
advertising too.
mhm.
Yeah,
Also,
last summer the walrus were here. The walrus were here all summer around Dimeed, and they're like a big haul out all over the beachways, south side. I've saw pictures. I was gone part of the summer, but then I still saw pictures again of so many walrus on our beaches.
yeah. Could you remind me what summer that was?
Last summer.
Last summer. That's great.
2025.
Thank you for sharing that. That's amazing. Yeah, we've seen just like in the past couple days, we've just started looking at these satellite images, but it looks like a lot of walruses are hauling out on Big Diamond, right across the border from you guys. That's something we're trying to explore more. And I also just wanted to say that something we try to do, or as a program, Cam, tries to do as many community visits as possible for the MTR Peak program. And yeah, the Walrus program, it is our goal to try to get out to as many communities as we can to have hunter meetings to kind of share this information directly to hunters. And it would be a great goal to try to do that at Diamede at some point.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Opik. That was good. Your thoughts and suggestions there. So any other questions? I do have one other thing I want to ask, and it's about, because I want to say I'm so excited that you have reestablished the harvest sampling. Because just like for the bowhead monitoring that goes on with the Alaska Eskimo Whaling Commission, those samples are nowhere else in the world that you can get, for the most part, pristine, healthy whale samples. And you have it's a privilege to get samples from walruses, from harvested walruses. And those tissues are invaluable, I think, more so than just the numbers. I mean, it's all, you want as many clues as possible as to how walrus are faring, right? With your population survey, with the changing Arctic conditions. And those samples are invaluable. So I'm excited to hear the results. And you've got some, diet work. It sounds like you're looking at harmful algal bloom tissues. So we're excited about that as part of the EcoHab project. Diseases, I'm really glad you're looking at I don't know, the diseases regarding especially the avian influenza. Know that we have avian influenza in the region in our red fox positive. We have avian influenza in 2023. I think that was the last year they were testing. In glaucous gulls from Safety Sound. And so we are all, and we have sea lions in the area that cross paths with walrus, and so we know sea lions are a tough one too. We don't have any positive sea lions in Alaska, thank God, but in other parts of the world, sea lions have been devastated by this avian bird flu that's jumped. So thank you so much. And we want to, I just wanted to highlight at these times, getting those walrus tissues is just fantastic. I'm so glad you've started your program. When would we maybe be able to hear the results of those? Or is that separate programs we would go and then chase down who does that? Or is that something you Fish and Wildlife will be reporting back on or could report back on the results of those tissues?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, there's 5 different program or different research partners looking at different things in these different tissues, and they're running their own analyses and doing their own lab work. But we can keep tabs and try to get an update on when results will be available. And yeah, we'd certainly be able to summarize those results as they relate to walruses in the future. Yeah.
Wonderful. That's wonderful, because that to me is really important. Those tissues that you can get reproductive, those are real-time health of the walrus. And I think people are very, we're part of the ecosystem here, and whatever's happening to walrus is either going to happen to us or be a part of us, because one way or the other, it's all connected. So thank you so much I know you guys had a pause, but I'm a thumbs up on if you can get those results back to us somehow, the region, that would be wonderful.
Yeah, and if there's going to be future sampling, will there be kits sent out to these tribal communities?
Yeah, and that would be a great goal, is to get kits, maybe especially for harmful algal blooms and pathogen monitoring. Yeah, that'd be a great goal for our program, to get kits to more walrus hunting communities and do some hunter training.
Awesome.
I will also say,
go ahead.
Disclaimer: we fought really hard to get the funding to make WHMP happen this past year, and we're fighting really hard again to try to get it to happen next year. But that is currently not a sure thing. So
yeah, good luck.
our goal and plan is to continue that program, but yeah, it's not firmed up yet.
Yeah. Well, if you need help from this end of things, we'll do our part to try to help. If you need a letter or something like that, we would, because I think those walrus are not, they're telling you a story with their body right there, and it's important we're learning from that. So,
and important to keep our people safe and healthy, because we're the consumers.
yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah, I got a question.
Go ahead, Vivers.
We had, for the last 30 years, the Fish and Wildlife Service giving samples, collecting samples, not just the skin, but the organs as well, and reproductive as well. My question is, are they still doing that? Or I want to say they're still doing it. Maybe talk to other walrus hunters in our region or up north, and see if they can work with you in regards to collecting samples as well too. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivers. I think go ahead, Devin or Camryn.
Yeah, thank you, Bivers. Yeah, so we just started this program back up this past spring, and we were able to work with some hunters and captains to get samples for these projects both in Gamble and Sabunga. And yeah, they're getting a bunch of different types of organ tissue, and skin samples. But yeah, I think as we kind of mentioned, it would be a great goal to try to expand that sampling program as much as we can. They also used to get teeth from harvested animals, so we have a big stockpile and database of walrus teeth that we've used for various things over the year. One thing that's good for is determining how old the harvested walrus was. Now we're developing new methods to get that information without needing to take a tooth, but there might still be some value in continuing to add to our tooth collection as well for various research projects.
All right. All right. Well, you guys have gone way past the 7:30 mark, and I appreciate it. How are you guys holding up? Devin and Camryn, you're all right? All right. So we've had a good discussion. Any other thoughts or questions for Devin and Camryn? All right. Well, with that, we better close it out so everybody can get on with their evening. I do want to mention we're going to take a break with Straight Science over Christmas, and we will resume on January 8th. There'll be notifications there, and we're going to start off with a Rick Toman. What a way to start off 2026. We're going to start off with a Rick Toman history of the weather in the region, and that should be very interesting and a nice smooth start to January and of the brand new 2026. So I see something in the chat. Oh, you're still getting kudos. That's very kind, Irina. Yep, this is the time to show some love for Devin and Camryn for the work they did and then having to get up and tell us all about it and answer all these questions. So it's very much appreciated your time tonight, taking your time out of the evening after a long day to talk to us. So we all are very appreciative of that. And if you guys want to stay for a sec afterward, we'll let all these nice people head off to their evenings. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you in the new year. Have a good night, everyone.